Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little darker. A time of mud and manure and misery. We're diving into what life was really like during the Middle Ages. Forget the knights and tournaments that storybooks sold you. The truth is, you probably wouldn't last a single night being a medieval peasant. And I'll explain why today. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're hearing this from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to me seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background noise, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1325. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, you're lying on a straw-filled sack that's crawling with fleas. Your back aches from the uneven ground beneath you, and the air around you smells of smoke, and unwashed bodies and animal dung. There's no memory foam, no clean cotton sheets, no pillow with the perfect loft. Your bed is a half-rotted straw mattress shared with your siblings or your children, sometimes with the chickens too when foxes are about. The straw hasn't been changed in months. It's damp from the ground, from spilled drinks, from bodily fluids that nobody discusses. Your one-room home is dark, so dark. No electricity, not even candles most nights. Those are expensive. Made of valuable tallow or beeswax that you can't afford to burn just to see. The only light comes from the dying embers in the fire pit in the center of your home. A small stone-lined depression that fills the single room with smoke because chimneys aren't common yet. The smoke rises, mostly, finding its way out through a hole in the thatched roof, but much of it lingers, stinging your eyes, coating your lungs, darkening the rafters where strips of meat and herbs hang to dry and smoke. This smoke is your constant companion. It's in your clothes, your hair, under your fingernails. It's still dark outside, but you know it's time to rise. There are no clocks, no alarms, but your body knows the rhythm after years of the same routine. You might have a cockerel to announce the dawn, but you're usually awake before it crows. Sleep isn't something you do in a single 8-hour block. You sleep when darkness falls because candles and rushlights are too precious to waste. Then wake in the middle of the night for a quiet hour or two of contemplation or prayer, or whispered conversation with your spouse. Then sleep again until just before dawn. Your feet touch the packed earth floor, cold and slightly damp. There are no wooden floors in peasant homes, just the ground, sometimes strewn with rushes, or straw that are changed once or twice a year, usually for special occasions like Easter or Christmas. The old rushes underneath have years of food scraps, animal droppings, dirt from outside, all compressed into a fragrant layer that's home to fleas and mice and all manner of tiny creatures. It's just the way floors are. No one questions it. Your first task is to rekindle the fire. You've kept the embers alive overnight under a covering of ashes, a skill passed down through generations. Without matches or lighters, losing your fire means a trip to a neighbor to borrow some of theirs, or the difficult task of starting one with flint and steel and carefully prepared tinder. You kneel before the fire pit, your knees remembering their place on the hard-packed earth, and gently blow on the embers, feeding them small twigs and dried grass until flames appear. The fire is the heart of your home, your cooking source, your warmth, your light, your protection against the unseen things that lurk in the darkness. You're hungry, but breakfast isn't what you're used to. There's no coffee, no toast, no eggs unless your chickens are laying well. Most mornings you eat a thin porridge made from whatever grain is cheapest and most available, usually barley or oats, sometimes rye. You call it pottage, and it's been soaking overnight in the iron pot beside the fire, softening the grains that would otherwise take hours to cook. You add water from the wooden bucket you filled yesterday at the village well, and hang the pot over the now crackling fire. There's no sugar to sweeten it. Sugar is for nobles and merchants, not for people like you. If you're fortunate, you might have a little honey saved, or some dried fruit, but most days it's just grain and water and salt if you have it. While the pottage cooks, you step outside into the pre-dawn chill. Your home is small, just one room with walls made of wattle and daub, wooden frames filled with a mixture of mud and straw and animal dung that hardens into a serviceable wall. The roof is thatch, bundles of reeds or straw tied together and layered to keep out most of the rain. It needs replacing every few years, but for now, it does its job. Mostly. There are always leaks when the rain is heavy, always damp spots in the corners. Outside your home is a small yard, shared perhaps with neighbors in your cluster of peasant dwellings. There's the midden heap where kitchen scraps and human waste are thrown. It smells terrible in the summer heat, but it's far enough from the door that you've grown used to it. There's the small shed where tools are kept, perhaps a chicken coop if you're fortunate enough to own chickens. Beyond that are the common fields where you'll spend most of your daylight hours, working the strips of land allocated to your family by the lord of the manor. The sky is beginning to lighten now, revealing the world in shades of gray. You relieve yourself quickly behind the house. There are no toilets, no privacy, no toilet paper. You use leaves or straw or moss, whatever is available. Cleanliness, as we understand it, doesn't exist. You wash your hands in the bucket of water by the door if you remember. But hand-washing isn't a ritual yet. No one has connected dirty hands with illness. No one understands that the germs you carry back into the house might be the same, ones that took 2 of your children before they reached their 5th year. Back inside, the pottage is bubbling. You stir it with a wooden spoon, one of your few possessions that isn't absolutely necessary for survival. The porridge is bland, but filling. You've added a handful of dried peas from last year's harvest, a luxury that adds protein and flavor. You eat straight from the pot. There are no individual plates in your home. Perhaps you have a wooden bowl or two for special occasions, but day to day, the family eats from the communal pot with wooden spoons or pieces of hard bread used as scoops. When bread is available, it's not the soft white bread of modern bakeries. It's dense, dark, made with whatever grain is available, usually rye or maslin, a mixture of whatever grains have grown in the fields. It's often stretching with ground peas or beans or acorns when grain is scarce, making it heavy and sometimes bitter. Your spouse stirs beside you, rising to join you by the fire. Words are few in the morning. There's too much to do for idle chatter. Your children, if they've survived infancy, sleep a bit longer on their shared pallets, huddled together for warmth. You've had 6 children, but only 3 have survived. This isn't unusual. This isn't tragic in your world. It's simply the way of things. Children die, from coughs that don't improve, from fevers that burn too hot, from the flux that empties their little bodies of fluid until they're too weak to cry. You've mourned each one, but life continues. The fields don't plow themselves. The animals don't tend themselves. So your grief is carried with you as you work, not given its own time and space. The light outside grows stronger, and now it's truly time to begin the day's work. If it's spring, there's plowing to be done, fields to be prepared for, planting. If it's summer, there's weeding and tending. If it's autumn, there's harvesting. The busiest time of year when everyone works from dawn until well after dusk. And if it's winter, there's still work, repairing tools, spinning wool, preserving food, tending to winter crops. There are no weekends, no vacations, no sick days. There's Sunday, when you're supposed to rest and worship, but even then animals must be fed, fires must be tended, food must be prepared. You pull on the same clothes you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and probably will wear tomorrow. You own perhaps 2 sets of clothing. your everyday wear and slightly better clothes for church and celebrations. The fabric is homespun wool or linen, rough against your skin but durable. The wool keeps you warm even when wet, a vital quality in the damp climate. Your clothes are brown or gray or undyed white. Colored fabric is expensive and impractical for work clothes. They smell of smoke and sweat and the animals you tend, but so does everyone else, so you don't notice it anymore. Your feet go into wooden, clogs or simple leather shoes if you have them. Many peasants go barefoot in the warmer months to save their footwear for winter. There are no socks as you know them. Perhaps woolen cloths wrapped around your feet in the coldest weather, but your feet are tough, calloused, immune to the small stones and thorns that would leave a modern person limping and bleeding. As you step outside again, the village is coming to life around you. Smoke rises from other small houses clustered together for safety and community. Someone's cow lows in the distance, ready to be milked. The Lord's rooster crows from the manor house up on the small hill. Your village is small, perhaps 30 families in all. Surrounded by the fields, you all work together. Beyond the fields is the forest, dark and somewhat mysterious, the source of firewood and game and wild foods, but also home to outlaws and wild animals and things that howl in the night. The day ahead is long, so very long. In summer, you might work from dawn until dusk, 16 hours or more of physical labor. In winter, the workday is shorter, limited by daylight, but there's still wood to chop, animals to tend, food to prepare. Your back already aches, a constant companion after years of bending in the fields. Your hands are calloused, cracked, the nails broken and dirt embedded so deeply it will never truly wash away. Your teeth ache too. Many are missing or broken from years of coarse bread and untreated decay. Dentists don't exist. If a tooth hurts badly enough, the blacksmith or barber might pull it for you, without painkillers, without sterilization. The tools you'll use today are simple. A wooden plow, perhaps, pulled by an ox if your family is prosperous enough to own one, or by you and your spouse if not. There's the sickle for harvesting, the wooden rake for gathering, the flail for threshing. These tools are precious, handed down through generations, repaired and mended rather than replaced. Iron is expensive. The metal parts of your tools represent significant wealth. They're cared for religiously, oiled and stored properly, never left to rust. As you walk to the fields, you pass the village church, the only stone building in the settlement. It's small by modern standards, but looms large in your world. The parish priest is one of the few literate people you know, a connection to the wider world of learning and spirituality. The church dominates not just the physical landscape, but the rhythm of your days and years. The church bells mark the hours, call you to prayer, announce deaths and celebrations. The Christian calendar determines your festivals, your feast days, your fast days. You fast for Lent, for Advent, for Ember Days, for Rogation Days, for Saints' Days. Nearly a third of the year is designated for some form of fasting or abstinence. Religion isn't just something you do on Sundays. It's woven into every aspect of life. You cross yourself when you hear thunder, when you begin a journey, when you put bread in the oven. You whisper quick prayers throughout the day, asking for protection, for good weather, for healthy children. Saints are as real to you as your neighbors, each with their own specialty. Saint Fiacre for hemorrhoids, Saint Apollonia for toothache, Saint Barbara for protection from lightning. You wear a small Saint Christopher medal around your neck. It was your mother's. It's meant to protect travelers. The world as you understand it is filled with both divine and malevolent forces. Angels watch over you. Demons tempt you. Fairies might steal your child or spoil your milk. These aren't superstitions to you. They're the reality of a world you can't fully control or comprehend. When crops fail, when children sicken, when strange lights appear in the marsh, there are explanations beyond the scientific. Sometimes those explanations are comforting, sometimes terrifying. But they help make sense of a world that often seems arbitrary and cruel. You reach the fields as the sun clears the horizon. Your designated strips are scattered throughout the common fields, not consolidated in one convenient location. The system ensures everyone has some good land and some poor land, some well-drained soil and some that turns to mud with the slightest rain. It's a form of risk management in a world where one bad harvest can mean starvation. The work begins. If it's plowing season, you guide the heavy wooden plow through soil that seems determined to resist. The iron plowshare, the most valuable part, cuts into the earth with agonizing slowness. Each furrow represents an hour or more of straining, muscles, and muttered encouragements to the ox or horse pulling it. Modern plows turn the soil completely, burying weeds and exposing fresh earth. Your medieval plow merely scratches the surface, requiring fields to be plowed multiple times in different directions to properly prepare them for planting. If it's harvest time, you bend double with your sickle, cutting the grain one handful at a time, your back screaming in protest, but your hands never stopping. Every grain is precious, representing meals for the coming winter. You can't afford to waste any, so you work methodically, carefully, from dawn until your fingers are too stiff to grip the sickle anymore. Children follow behind, gathering any dropped stalks, ensuring nothing is wasted. The sun climbs higher, beating down on your back, your neck reddening and peeling under its constant attention. There's no sunscreen, no sunglasses, just a broad-brimmed hat if you have one, or a piece of cloth tied around your head if you don't. Water is carried to the fields in wooden or leather containers, warm and sometimes silty from the well, but necessary to replace what you lose through sweat. You stop briefly when the church bells ring for noon, straightening your aching back, saying a quick prayer, eating the small meal you've brought with you, perhaps bread and cheese if you have it, or cold pottage left over from morning, or simply more bread. Food is fuel, eaten quickly, between tasks, not savored or lingered over. There's no coffee break, no lunch hour. You eat what you need to keep working, then return to your task. The afternoon stretches endlessly before you. Hours of the same repetitive movements, the same straining muscles, the same exposure to elements. The sun that seemed welcome in the cool morning now feels like an enemy, drawing precious moisture from your body, from the soil, from the crops themselves. You work in rhythm with those around you, your spouse, your neighbors, sometimes singing or telling stories to pass the time, sometimes working in exhausted silence. As the day progresses, new pains emerge. The blister on your palm breaks, weeping clear fluid that mixes with dirt to create a muddy paste. Your lower back seizes occasionally, forcing you to straighten and press your hands against it for momentary relief. Your feet throb inside your wooden clogs or leather shoes, swollen from hours of standing and walking on uneven ground. These pains aren't unusual or concerning. They're simply the cost of survival, as much a part of your daily experience as hunger or thirst. The weather is your constant companion, your greatest ally or your worst enemy depending on its mood. Rain makes the soil workable but turns paths to mud that sucks at your footwear. Sunshine ripens crops but can parch them too if it stays too long. Wind helps separate grain from chaff during threshing, but can flatten fields of growing wheat if it comes with storms. You watch the sky constantly, learning to read the clouds, to smell approaching rain, to feel the change in air pressure that signals weather turning. Your livelihood, your survival, depends on this meteorological literacy. As the sun begins its descent, you keep working. There's always more to do than daylight to do it in. But eventually, as shadows lengthen across the fields, you gather your tools and begin the walk home. Your steps are slower now, dragging with fatigue, but there's a certain satisfaction in muscles well used, in work completed, in fields that look different because of your efforts. The village is active again as families return from their various labors. Smoke rises more thickly from cooking fires. Children chase each other between houses. Chickens are shooed into coops for protection from nocturnal predators. The smell of cooking food mingles with the ever-present odors of animals and smoke and unwashed bodies. Your home is as you left it this morning, the fire nearly out, needing to be rebuilt for the evening meal. This task falls to whoever returned first. Usually one of the children old enough to be trusted with fire but too young for field work. Tonight it's pottage again, but perhaps enhanced with vegetables from your small garden plot beside the house, the small area where you grow onions, cabbages, herbs, turnips. If you're fortunate, there might be a bit of salt pork or bacon to add, a few precious slivers that transform the bland porridge into something worth savoring. While the meal cooks, there are evening chores. Animals must be fed and secured for the night. Water must be fetched again from the village well. Tools, cleaned and put away. If there's still daylight, perhaps you work on necessary repairs, patching the roof, mending a broken tool handle, reinforcing the chicken coop against foxes. These small tasks are squeezed into the margins of days devoted to the greater work of food production. As twilight deepens, you gather around the fire with your family. This is the most peaceful time of day, when work is done, but sleep hasn't yet claimed you. Perhaps someone tells a story, a tale heard from a traveling peddler, or a legend passed down through generations. Perhaps you sing quietly, songs of love and loss and work and faith. Perhaps you simply sit in weary silence, watching the flames and letting your mind empty of thought. Your evening meal is eaten from the communal pot, just as breakfast was. There's no dining table. You sit on stools or the packed earth floor, balancing your wooden bowl or trencher of hard bread on your knees. You eat everything, wasting nothing, using the bread to sop up the last bits of broth, licking your fingers clean. Hunger is too close a companion to waste even a morsel. After eating, there's a brief period for handicrafts if the light allows. Women spin wool into thread using drop spindles. Men carve wood or repair tools. Children help as they're able. These evening activities aren't hobbies or pastimes. They're essential production, creating the fabric that will become clothing, the tools that will plant next year's crops, the baskets that will hold the harvest. As darkness falls completely, the fire provides the only light. Candles are saved for emergencies or special occasions. Rushlights, made by dipping. The pithy center of rushes and animal fat might be lit if there's mending that can't wait until morning. Mostly, though, you simply adapt to the darkness, moving carefully through the familiar space of your home, completing necessary tasks by touch and memory. Bedtime comes early, not long after full dark. There's no staying up late reading or watching television. No artificial extension of day into night. When it's dark, it's time to sleep, to rest bodies that will need to work again tomorrow. You say your evening prayers, asking for protection through the night, for the souls of departed family members, for good weather and good health in the days to come. Your bed is as it was this morning, a straw-filled mattress on the floor or on a simple wooden platform. Perhaps there's a woolen blanket if your family is prosperous. Linen sheets are for the wealthy, not for peasants like you, You sleep in your undergarments or naked in the warmer months, perhaps keeping your day clothes on in the coldest part of winter. There are no pajamas, no special clothes just for sleeping. The fire is banked for the night, covered with ashes to keep the embers alive until morning. The house grows darker, cooler, quieter. Outside, the village settles into nighttime rhythms. Perhaps the watch calls the hour, a practice in larger settlements to alert for fires or intruders. Perhaps an owl hoots from the forest edge, a sound that might be an owl, or might be something else that mimics its call. As you lie on your hard bed, your body reminds you of the day's work. Your back throbs dully. Your hands feel swollen and stiff. Your feet pulse with their own heartbeat of pain. But these discomforts are familiar, almost comforting in their predictability. They are the price of making it through another day, of providing for your family, of surviving in a world that offers few comforts and many challenges. Sleep comes in fits and starts. You wake when the fire pops loudly, when one of the children cries out in a dream, when an unfamiliar sound comes from outside. Each time, you listen intently, assessing for danger, then allow yourself to drift back into slumber. Your sleep isn't the uninterrupted 8 hours considered ideal in modern times. It's broken, segmented, with a period of wakefulness in the middle of the night that you consider normal. During this midnight waking, you might sit by the fire, adding a small piece of wood to bring up the flames briefly. You might talk quietly with your spouse about the next day's work, about the children, about concerns for the coming winter. You might simply sit in contemplative silence, saying prayers or thinking about deceased loved ones who seem closer in these quiet hours. This time between first and second sleep isn't insomnia to you. It's just the natural rhythm of night. Eventually, second sleep claims you, perhaps deeper than the first, carrying you through until the faintest lightening of the sky signals the approach of dawn. And then it begins. Again, the fire, the pottage, the work, the endless cycle of survival that defines peasant life in medieval times. The seasons mark larger cycles in your existence. Spring brings planting and hope, the rebirth of the world after winter's scarcity. The days lengthen, allowing more work time, more production. Plants emerge from the soil like small miracles, promising food to come if weather and fate allow. Spring is mud season too, when paths become nearly impassable, when everything you own seems damp and never fully dries. Summer brings growth and constant work, tending crops, weeding endlessly, protecting plants from pests and weather. The days are long and hot, the work seemingly without end. But summer also brings fresh food after winter's preserved provisions. The first tender greens, the early berries, small luxuries that taste of sunshine and possibility. Autumn brings harvest and its frenetic pace, the critical time when a year's work is gathered and stored. Everyone works, from oldest grandparent to youngest child capable of carrying a bundle. The days shorten, but the work doesn't, creating a race against time and weather. There's food in abundance briefly, a welcome change, but much must be preserved for the lean months ahead. Winter brings a different kind of hardship, cold that seeps into your bones, darkness that limits productive hours, preserved food that grows monotonous and sometimes runs short before spring. The work changes but doesn't cease, moving indoors or to sheltered areas, focusing on repairs and preparations for the coming year. Winter is when illness strikes hardest, when the old and very young are most vulnerable, when the struggle for survival is most acute. Through all these cycles, larger forces shape your existence. The Manor Lord demands his due, A significant portion of everything you produce goes to him as rent for the land you work. You're not a slave. Technically, you're free, but you're bound to the land by necessity and law. You can't simply leave and seek better opportunities elsewhere. Medieval society doesn't work that way. The church claims its share, too, the tithe, that supports the parish priest and the larger ecclesiastical hierarchy. 1/10 of everything you produce, already after the Lord has taken his portion, goes to the church. You give it willingly most times. The promise of salvation and the practical support of the parish makes it seem worthwhile. The crown reaches even into your small village. Taxes levied for wars you'll never see, for castles you'll never enter, for a monarchy that exists in your life primarily as an abstraction and as the face on the few coins that might pass through your hands in a year. These taxes are collected by the Lord or his steward, adding to the burden of survival. Nature takes its own tax through weather and pestilence and disease. The rain that falls too heavily and rots the grain in the field, the drought that withers crops before harvest, the mice and rats that eat stored grain, the illnesses that sweep through the village taking the weak and sometimes the strong. These are the unpredictable costs of medieval existence. Your life expectancy, if you've survived childhood, might extend to 40 or 50 years, though many die sooner from accident or illness. By 30, you're considered middle-aged, your body already showing the wear of hard physical labor and limited nutrition. Women face the additional dangers of childbirth, many dying in their 20s or 30s from complications that modern medicine would easily address. Medical care, as you understand it, is a mix of practical herbalism, religious invocation, and superstition. The village might have a wise woman who knows which plants ease pain or reduce fever. The priest offers prayers and blessings for the sick. For anything serious, there's little to be done beyond comfort measures and hope. Surgery is brutally simple when it occurs, performed without anesthesia, without antiseptics, often causing more harm than good. Your diet, while monotonous, follows seasonal patterns that modern nutritionists would recognize as reasonably healthy when food is plentiful. Whole grains, vegetables, occasional meat or fish, limited sugar, lots of physical activity. But the periodic scarcity undermines this potential healthfulness. Late winter and early spring are the hunger months, when stored food runs low but new crops aren't yet producing. Your body knows this cycle intimately, putting on weight in autumn when food is abundant, slowly losing it through winter and early spring. Hygiene, as we understand it, doesn't exist. You might wash your face and hands daily if water is easily available, but full-body bathing is rare, perhaps a few times a year. The link between cleanliness and health isn't understood, so the motivation for regular bathing doesn't exist. Your clothes are washed infrequently. Your home is swept but not sanitized. The concept of germs, of invisible agents of disease, is centuries away. Your teeth suffer from the coarse bread that forms your dietary staple, the small stones, from millstones mixed with the flour, gradually wearing down your enamel. Dental hygiene consists perhaps of rubbing them with a cloth, using a twig as a toothpick, occasionally rinsing with water or herb-infused mixtures. Tooth decay is common, painful, and eventually leads to loss. Your world is small by modern standards. Many peasants never travel more than 10 miles from their birthplace in their entire lives. The nearest market town might be a day's walk away, visited perhaps monthly to sell surplus produce or handicrafts and purchase necessities that can't be produced at home. The nearest city is the stuff of stories for most, a place of wonders and dangers, of strange people and exotic goods. Information travels slowly, carried by merchants, by traveling friars, by the occasional noble party passing through. News might be months old by the time it reaches your village, filtered through many tellings, altered with each repetition. What happens in the next county is foreign news. What happens in the next country might as well be happening in another world. Your understanding of that wider world is limited by education and exposure. You're almost certainly illiterate, like most of your neighbors. The written word is the domain of the church, of merchants, of nobility. Your knowledge comes through oral tradition, through stories told around fires, through sermons heard at church. Maps, if you've ever seen one, are crude and often wildly inaccurate. The world beyond your experience is populated by your imagination and by tales that mix fact and fancy, without clear distinction. Time is measured differently in your world. The hours of the day are marked by church bells, by the position of the sun, by the growling of your stomach. The days of the week have their rhythm of work and worship. The months pass with their seasonal tasks. Years are marked by memorable events. The great storm, the year the river flooded, the winter so many died of the coughing sickness. There are no birthdays celebrated. Many peasants only know their age approximately. I was born the year the old king died, or I came in the summer of the great famine. In this medieval world, you know your place and rarely question it. The social hierarchy is as much a fact of life as the seasons or the need to eat. God established the three estates: those who pray, those who fight, and those who work. You are among the latter, the vast majority who support the smaller groups of clergy and nobility through your labor. This isn't seen as unfair. It's simply the way the world is organized, the way it has always been, and presumably always will be. Your identity is tied to your village, your family, your occupation. Individualism as we understand it doesn't exist. You're John the miller's son, or Margaret from Oakham, or William who works the North Field. Your worth is measured by your contribution to the community, by your adherence to expected norms, by your ability to fulfill your designated role. Standing out is rarely advantageous. Conformity ensures acceptance and support when it's needed. Privacy. Another modern concept is virtually non-existent. Your home has one room where everyone sleeps, eats, lives together. Your business is known to your neighbors. Your conflicts, your joys, your sorrows are community property. This lack of privacy isn't seen as deprivation. It's the normal state of existence, providing both the comfort of constant community and the constraints of constant observation. Entertainment in your world is simple but valued deeply for its break from routine. Perhaps the village gathers for dancing on feast days, for competitions of strength or skill, for storytelling by travelers with news of distant places. These diversions aren't frequent, making them all the more precious when they occur. Music is part of daily life, too, working songs that establish rhythm for communal tasks, lullabies that comfort children, ballads that preserve history and culture. Laughter still exists in this difficult world, found in shared jokes, in the antics of children, in the occasional moment of unexpected joy. Humor tends toward the physical and immediate, toward observations of human folly and the occasional subversion of authority when it's safe to do so. Life is too short and too precarious not to find reasons to laugh when they present themselves. Love exists too, though it might look different from modern romantic ideals. Marriages are often arranged for practical considerations, combining resources or skills, or solidifying community bonds. But affection grows through shared struggle, through children raised together, through the intimate knowledge of another person's habits and needs. The public displays of affection common in modern times would seem strange and unnecessary. Love is demonstrated through acts of service, through provision, through steadfastness in hard times. Children are both burdens and blessings. Additional mouths to feed in the short term but necessary labor and security for the future. They aren't sheltered from the realities of life. They witness birth and death, participate in work from early ages, absorb the skills they'll need through observation and gradually increasing responsibility. Childhood as a protected time of play and development is a luxury that doesn't exist for peasant families. Death is your constant companion, not a distant possibility but a present reality. You've likely witnessed many deaths, family members, neighbors, infants and elders, and sometimes those in their prime. Bodies are prepared at home, watched, over by family, buried with ceremony but without excessive sentiment. Grief is real but pragmatic. Life continues with its demands regardless of personal loss. The dead are remembered, spoken of, believed to still participate in the community from their place in heaven, hell, or purgatory. As you lie on your straw mattress once more, another day of medieval life complete. You don't think of yourself as deprived or suffering. This is simply life as you know it, as everyone you know experiences it. The hardships are shared. The occasional joys appreciated fully. You don't know about flush toilets or antibiotics or refrigeration. You can't miss what you've never imagined. Your world, for all its difficulties, has a certain coherence. Everything has its place and purpose, from the smallest herb in your garden to the king in his distant castle. The rhythms of days and seasons provide structure. The community around you provides support. Faith provides meaning and hope beyond the material struggles of existence. It's a hard life by modern standards, impossibly hard, but it's a life lived fully within its context, with moments of contentment and purpose that transcend the physical discomforts. Sleep comes again, your body surrendering to exhaustion, preparing for another day of the same tasks, the same struggles, the same small victories. The smoke from the banked fire hangs in the air, the familiar smell of home. Outside, the night creatures call to each other, a counterpoint to the soft breathing of your family around you. Tomorrow will be much like today, and the day after that, and all the days that make up a medieval peasant's life. The darkness enfolds you, as it enfolds your village, your fields, your world. In this darkness, in this quiet, there is a certain peace. Not the peace of comfort or security as we understand it, but the peace of knowing exactly where you fit, what's expected, what tomorrow will bring. It's the peace of a life, without the paralyzing abundance of choices, without the constant striving for something more or different. It's a hard-earned peace, purchased with physical pain and limited horizons, but peace nonetheless. And so you sleep, a medieval peasant at the end of another day, untroubled by the knowledge of what future centuries will bring, unaware that someday people will listen to stories of your difficult life as they drift into comfortable sleep in heated homes on mattresses designed for perfect support, surrounded by conveniences you couldn't imagine. You sleep and dream perhaps of a good harvest, of a mild winter, of small comforts and achievable hopes. You sleep and prepare in that sleep for the dawn that will wake you to the same life once more. This is the reality of medieval peasant existence. Not the romanticized version of knights and ladies, not the sanitized version of history books, but the daily lived experience of the vast majority of European people for centuries. It's a life that would break most modern bodies and spirits within days, not through any dramatic horror but through the relentless physical demands, the constant low-level discomfort, the absence of what we now consider basic necessities. You wouldn't last a night as a medieval peasant. Your body isn't conditioned for the hard bed, the smoke-filled air, the ambient noise of animals and family members sharing a single room. Your immune system isn't prepared for the bacteria and parasites that were everyday companions. Your mind isn't accustomed to the darkness, the lack of entertainment, the limited horizons of possibility. And yet they survived, our ancestors, living full lives within these constraints, finding meaning, community, purpose, even joy in circumstances we would find intolerable. They weren't fundamentally different from us. These medieval peasants, they simply lived in a different reality with different expectations. Their strength wasn't superhuman, but it was shaped by necessity and circumstance to endure what seems unendurable to modern sensibilities. The distance between their world and ours is both vast and surprisingly small. The basic human needs remain unchanged: food, shelter, community, purpose, love. The ways those needs were met differ dramatically, highlighting both how far we've come in material comfort and perhaps what we've lost in certainty and connection. As you drift towards sleep, listening to these words, remember those who slept centuries ago on straw mattresses in smoke-filled cottages. Remember that they too dreamed, loved, worked, endured. Their lives made possible the world we inhabit now, with all its comforts and complexities. In remembering them, we honor the continuity of human experience across time, the shared humanity that connects us despite the differences in our daily existence. Sleep now, in your comfortable bed, in your temperature-controlled room, safe from most of the dangers that threatened your ancestors' rest. Sleep, and perhaps dream of them occasionally. These resilient people who lived and died without knowing how the story of humanity would continue to unfold. Sleep, secure in the knowledge that you don't have to wake before dawn to milk the cow or plow the field, that your survival doesn't depend on the strength of your back or the skill of your hands. Sleep, and be grateful for the accident of history that placed you here, now, instead of there, then. Sleep, and perhaps understand a little better the extraordinary ordinary lives that came before yours. Sleep, and know that someday, centuries from now, others may listen to stories of how we lived and wonder at our strange customs and limited knowledge, just as we wonder at those who came before. Sleep now. Let the darkness come. Let consciousness fade. Let the medieval world with its hardships and simplicities drift into your dreams. Sleep, while the words fade to silence, while the images blur and transform, while the present and past merge in the landscape of your mind. Sleep, and know that morning will come, as it always has, as it always will, bringing with it the gift of another day in your particular time and place in the long human story. Sleep. Just sleep. The world beyond your village exists mostly in stories for you, tales brought by rare travelers or pilgrims passing through. You know of cities, those crowded places of stone and commerce, but you may never see one in your lifetime. Your knowledge of geography extends perhaps 20 miles in any direction, the distance a person might walk in a day and return the next. Beyond that lies the realm of rumor and imagination. Dragons, perhaps, or people with heads in their chests, or kingdoms of untold wealth. Maps are rare, and those that exist show a world more symbolic than accurate. Jerusalem at the center. Paradise somewhere in the east. Monsters in the distant seas. Your village has relationships with neighboring settlements, ties of marriage and trade and shared resources. Perhaps you walk to the next village for their Saints' Day celebration, or they come to yours. Perhaps there's rivalry between young men of different villages, competitions of strength or skill during festival times, sometimes flaring into genuine conflict. There might be shared grazing land requiring negotiated access, or a forest where Gathering rights must be established and maintained. These relationships form essential networks of support and exchange, expanding the resources available beyond what exists within your immediate community. Trade happens at multiple levels in your world. Within the village, there's constant, informal exchange. A dozen eggs traded for help repairing a roof. Extra milk from your cow shared with a neighbor whose own cow is dry. Labor exchanged for specialized skills like blacksmithing or carpentry. Between villages, slightly more formal arrangements emerge. One settlement known for fine wool trading, with another known for grain production. Markets in larger towns or at crossroads connect the wider region, bringing together goods from many communities. Peddlers and traveling merchants form a crucial link to the broader world, bringing goods impossible to produce locally. They arrive irregularly, their packs containing needles and pins, ribbons and thread, spices if anyone can afford them, perhaps small luxuries like glass beads or metal buttons. These travelers bring news along with their wares, stories of distant events, rumors of war or plague or unusual weather in other regions. They're welcomed for both their goods and their information, though sometimes viewed with suspicion as outsiders with unknown loyalties. Your home requires constant maintenance to remain habitable. The thatch roof needs complete replacement every few years, a major undertaking requiring many hands and specialized knowledge. Walls of wattle and daub crack and crumble with weather and time, patched and repaired seasonally. Wooden elements rot in the damp climate, replaced piecemeal as needed and possible. This maintenance isn't renovation as we understand it. Not improvement or modernization, but simply holding back the constant erosion of usability. Keeping the structure functional enough to provide basic shelter. The construction of your home reflects available local materials and generations of practical experience. Where stone is abundant, lower walls might be built from field stones gathered during plowing. Where timber is plentiful, wooden frames form the structure. Where clay soil dominates, cob or brick might be utilized. These materials require minimal processing and transportation, harvested and prepared near the building site by the community members who will inhabit the finished structure. Inside this home, furnishings are sparse by modern standards. Perhaps a table and benches, sturdy and functional rather than decorative. Storage chests serve multiple purposes, containing possessions, providing seating, establishing sleeping platforms. Beds might be simple wooden frames with rope or leather strips providing support for straw mattresses. Much activity happens at floor level, sitting on packed earth, covered with rushes or straw, working near the central fire for light and warmth. The sensory experience of your medieval world differs profoundly from modern life. Smells are intense and omnipresent. Smoke from fires, unwashed bodies, animals living in close proximity, food being prepared and preserved, waste and decay in the midden heap. These aren't offensive to you because they're the normal backdrop of existence. Only unusual or unexpected odors draw attention. Sounds create another layer of constant sensory input. Human voices in work and conversation. Animals with their various calls and movements wind through trees and crops. Rain on thatch. The rhythmic sounds of labor like chopping wood or beating flax. Church bells mark time and significant events, audible throughout the parish, creating a shared temporal experience. Silence is rare. True quiet, perhaps experienced only in the depths of winter nights when snow blankets the landscape and livestock are settled in their shelters. Touch grounds you in the physical world. Rough, homespun fabric against skin, smooth wooden handles worn by generations of use, cold metal of precious tools, the varied textures of earth and plants as you work in field and garden. Your feet know the land intimately through daily contact. identifying paths by feel in low light, sensing changes in soil composition relevant to planting decisions. Taste is less varied than in the modern world, but more intense in its seasonality. The first fresh greens of spring offer vivid flavor after winter's preserved foods. Summer. Fruits burst with sweetness unavailable the rest of the year. Autumn's harvest brings abundance and variety before winter narrows options again. Each food is appreciated in its proper time, eaten at peak ripeness and recognized as the temporary gift it represents. Your perception of beauty differs from modern aesthetics. Human beauty connects directly to signs of health and capability, strength in men, fertility in women, the flush of well-oxygenated blood beneath the skin rather than artificial color. Environmental beauty is recognized, but often through a practical lens. A well-tended field with straight furrows, a properly stacked woodpile, clothing evenly, woven and practical for its purpose. Abstract appreciation exists alongside functional assessment. The patterns of frost on winter mornings admired, even as they signal challenging conditions. Art exists in your world not as a separate category of experience, but integrated into daily life. Decoration appears on functional objects. Carved, spoons and bowls, embroidered clothing edges, painted designs on house walls. Music emerges from work rhythms and community gatherings rather than specialized performances. Storytelling happens in the context of family evenings and communal celebrations. Beauty and utility intertwine, neither sacrificed completely to the other. The night sky forms a familiar map overhead. Constellations recognized and named, their movements marking seasonal progression. Without light pollution, stars appear in overwhelming numbers. The Milky Way, a visible band across the dark. The moon's phases govern many activities. Planting according to its waxing and waning. Gathering certain herbs under specific lunar conditions. Timing festive gatherings to make use of its light for travel. Celestial events like eclipses or comets inspire both wonder and concern. Interpreted as omens or divine messages through the lens of religion and folklore. Animals occupy a complex position in your world, neither purely utilitarian resources nor beloved pets in the modern sense. Working animals like oxen and horses represent massive investments of resources, their health and welfare paramount to family survival. They receive care reflecting their value, protection from elements, priority feeding during scarcity, treatment for injuries and ailments when possible. The relationship combines economic necessity with genuine connection, formed through daily interaction and mutual dependency. Domestic animals serve multiple purposes. Chickens providing eggs, pest control, and eventually meat. Pigs convert household waste and forest forage into valuable protein. Sheep offer wool, milk, meat, and fertilizer in an integrated system that wastes nothing. Cats control rodents that threaten stored grain. Dogs guard livestock and homes, assist with hunting, provide companionship. These animals live in closer proximity to humans than in modern arrangements, often sheltering within the home itself during harsh weather, or occupying attached structures that share walls with human living space. Wild animals represent both resources and threats. Game animals providing occasional meat if hunting rights allow. Predators posing dangers to livestock and sometimes people. Wolves feature prominently in folklore, embodying fears of what lurks beyond village boundaries. What might emerge from the forest on winter nights when hunger drives predators closer to human settlement. Bears, where they exist, inspire similar respect and concern. Smaller predators like foxes create constant pressure on poultry kept by peasant families, requiring vigilant protection and sturdy enclosures. Insects and rodents present persistent challenges. mice and rats consuming stored grain, insects attacking crops in field and storage. Controlling these pests occupies significant energy. Cats and dogs employed as hunters, physical barriers constructed and maintained, crops rotated, and fields managed to disrupt pest life cycles. Certain insects are welcomed for their benefits: bees for pollination and honey, ladybugs for consuming crop-damaging aphids. This relationship with the smallest fauna reflects deep observational knowledge developed over generations of agricultural practice. Weather shapes daily existence more directly than in modern life. Rain determines whether fieldwork happens or alternative indoor tasks fill the day. Wind direction carries information about coming conditions. Certain quarters associated with storms or clear periods based on local patterns. Cloud formations signal approaching systems hours or days before their arrival. This weather wisdom passes between generations through direct instruction and rhyming sayings that encode pattern recognition. Red sky at night. Shepherd's delight. Red sky in morning. Shepherd's warning. Seasons dictate not just agricultural work, but social patterns. Winter bringing communities closer through shared indoor activities and necessary cooperation for survival. Summer allowing greater independence as resources become temporarily abundant. Spring represents both promise and precarity. New growth, emerging but stored supplies dwindling before fresh harvest. Autumn brings the most intensive work period, the critical window for securing food that will sustain throughout winter and early spring. Your concept of health and illness reflects a complex blend of practical observation, religious understanding, and traditional belief. Humoral theory inherited from classical medicine suggests balance between blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile determines well-being. Imbalances cause illness requiring correction through diet, activity, or direct intervention like bloodletting. Simultaneously, illness might be understood as divine punishment requiring spiritual remedy, or the result of malevolent action requiring protective countermeasures. Mental health as a separate category doesn't exist in your conceptual framework, though conditions we would now recognize are certainly present. Melancholy, anxiety, compulsive behaviors, psychosis, all appear in medieval records under different names and explanatory frameworks. Treatment might come through religious practices like confession and penance, through community support and inclusion, through herbal remedies addressing physical symptoms, or through more problematic interventions aimed at demonic influences, believed responsible for severe manifestations. Your knowledge of the natural world comes through direct observation and inherited wisdom rather than formal education. You recognize countless plants by appearance, behavior, useful properties, seasonal availability. You read animal signs indicating weather changes, predator presence, mating seasons relevant to hunting. You understand soil conditions through color, texture, the plants that naturally grow in different areas. This knowledge isn't organized according to scientific taxonomy, but through practical categories. Plants that heal digestive ailments, trees that provide good building material, flowers that bloom when specific crops should be planted. Folklore encodes much of this practical knowledge in memorable form. Stories and sayings that transmit information about which mushrooms cause sickness, which weather patterns signal dangerous storms, which wild plants can supplement diet during scarcity. These traditional knowledge systems aren't mere superstition, but sophisticated information management adapted to primarily oral cultures, packaging essential survival data in narratives and rhymes resistant to distortion through retelling. Your relationship with time differs fundamentally from modern experience. The hours of daylight determine work periods rather than arbitrary clock divisions. Seasons, rather than calendar months, organize agricultural activities. Years blend together without the distinct demarcation of numbered dates, remembered instead by significant events. The year of the Great Flood, or 2 harvests after the king's soldiers came through. Age is similarly approximate, measured in relation to community events rather than precise birthdays. Old enough to remember when the church was built, rather than a specific number. The Catholic liturgical calendar provides structure beyond natural cycles, dividing the year into seasons with distinct character and requirements. Advent brings preparation and anticipation. Christmas, brief celebration amid winter scarcity. Lent, extended fasting and penitence. Easter, joyful observance coinciding with spring renewal. Saints' days create additional markers throughout the year, each with specific traditions. Foods, activities appropriate to their observance. This calendar connects your small community to the broader Christian world. Synchronized observances linking scattered populations through shared practice. Your understanding of the wider world comes primarily through religious instruction, presenting a cosmic order with Earth at center, surrounded by celestial spheres carrying planets, stars, and divine beings. Jerusalem sits at world's center in this conception. Rome, as seat of church authority, holds special significance. Beyond known territories lie lands of increasing strangeness in the medieval imagination, populated by monstrous races or blessed beings depending on direction and distance. This geography blends actual locations with mythological spaces, creating a world map as much moral and spiritual as physical. Political awareness extends to local lordship, perhaps to regional nobility if their actions directly affect your community. The king exists as a distant figure, relevant primarily through taxes collected and laws enforced by intermediaries. Peasant political action typically focuses on immediate concerns, resistance to increased rents or reduced access to common resources, rarely extending to broader systemic change. Collective negotiation through village representatives provides some leverage with local authorities. Unity in opposition to perceived injustice, offering protection through shared risk. Language in your world varies considerably by region. Local dialects differing enough between areas 50 miles apart that mutual comprehension becomes difficult. The language of ordinary people exists primarily in spoken form, written language being the domain of clergy, nobility, and specialized professionals like merchants. Latin serves as the international language of church and education, creating a separate linguistic sphere accessible only to the educated minority. This linguistic landscape reinforces local identity while complicating broader communication and connection. Names follow patterns reflecting community values and practical concerns. First names often come from religious sources. Saints' names, conveying protection and patronage to the bearer. Biblical names connecting to sacred history. Family names emerge gradually during the medieval period, initially as descriptive additions. John the Miller, William from the Hill, Thomas Smith, eventually becoming hereditary identifiers. These naming practices emphasize connection rather than individuality, placing each person within family and community context. Marriage represents both personal relationship and economic partnership, binding families as much as individuals. Negotiations often involve property considerations, what each party brings to the union in land access, tools, livestock, skills. Compatibility of temperament matters, but practical concerns predominate in a world where survival depends on successful household management. Love might develop through shared experience rather than preceding commitment, growing through the intimacy of daily cooperation and mutual dependence. Divorce, as we understand it, doesn't exist. though marriages might be annulled through church processes under specific circumstances, typically only accessible to nobility with political connections. Separation happens informally in some cases, one partner leaving permanently without legal dissolution. Widowhood occurs frequently given high mortality rates, leading to practical remarriage arrangements that maintain household viability and provide for dependent children. These remarriages often happen quickly by modern standards, necessity outweighing extended grieving periods. Children's lives differ profoundly from modern childhood. Infancy carries high mortality risk, leading to practices that might seem detached to modern observers but represent practical adaptation to frequent loss. Naming might be delayed until survival seems likely. Intense emotional investment tempered by statistical reality. Those who survive infancy enter productive roles early, contributing to household economy as soon as physically capable. This isn't exploitation in the medieval context, but necessary integration into family survival strategies and essential skills transmission. Despite these pragmatic approaches, children are valued and often deeply loved, protected according to available means, educated in necessary skills, included in community celebration and ritual. Play happens alongside work. Simple toys fashioned from available materials. Games teaching physical coordination and social rules simultaneously. Childhood games pass between generations with regional variations. Tag and hide-and-seek recognizable across centuries. Others specific to particular cultural context and available materials. Adolescence as a distinct life phase barely exists. The transition from child to adult occurring through gradual increase in responsibility rather than defined age boundaries. Puberty brings physical change but not necessarily social recognition as adult. Full adulthood arrives with marriage and household establishment for many, or with mastery of occupational skills and independent economic contribution. These transitions happen at younger ages than in modern society. 14-year-olds taking on adult work roles, 16-year-olds establishing families. Education happens through direct participation rather than separate institutional frameworks. Children learn by doing alongside adults, beginning with simple tasks and progressing to more complex skills as capacity develops. Knowledge transfers through demonstration and guided practice rather than abstract instruction. Practical application, preceding and sometimes replacing theoretical understanding. This educational approach produces deep competence in specific areas rather than broad general knowledge, specialized according to gender, family occupation, local resources, and needs. Craft specialization emerges from this practical education. Individuals developing particular skills beyond basic competence through extended practice and sometimes formal apprenticeship. The blacksmith, miller, carpenter, potter. These specialized roles support community function while depending on it for sustenance. A symbiotic relationship balancing interdependence with occupational identity. Some crafts remain within families for generations. Specialized knowledge and tools passing from parent to child, creating dynasties of practical expertise. Your limited possessions carry concentrated meaning, each item representing significant investment of labor in creation and maintenance. The wooden spoon used daily for cooking and eating, carved by hand from carefully selected wood, its handle worn smooth by years of use. The knife that serves multiple purposes from food preparation to craft work, its blade maintained through regular sharpening, its handle repaired and eventually replaced while preserving the valuable metal. The single good cloak that provides protection from elements, carefully brushed and mended, lasting decades through attentive care. These objects aren't merely functional but repositories of history and identity, connecting users to makers and to previous generations who handled the same items. Clothing communicates social information through material, cut, and condition rather than rapidly changing fashion. Fabric quality signals economic status, finer weaves and rarer materials, indicating greater resources. Color carries significance. Certain dyes more expensive and thus restricted to higher status display. Some colors associated with particular occupations or social roles. Clothing constructed for durability rather than aesthetic variation. Styles changing slowly across decades rather than seasonally. Practical adaptation to climate and work requirements predominating over decorative considerations. Food preparation occupies significant time and energy, particularly for women who maintain household provisioning, alongside fieldwork during busy agricultural periods. Cooking happens primarily in single-pot meals over open fire. Ingredients combined based on availability rather than precise recipes. Bread forms the foundation of diet when grain is available, baked in community ovens or as flatbreads on heated stones when necessary. Flavoring comes from herbs grown in kitchen gardens, wild plants gathered from available landscapes, limited spices when affordable, salt when accessible. The staple foods of your diet reflect local agricultural conditions and class position. Grains predominate. Prepared as porridges, breads, or beer depending on type and quality. Legumes provide critical protein. Dried peas and beans storing well through winter. Vegetables come from kitchen gardens, emphasizing hardy producers like cabbage, onions, turnips, kale. Fruits appear seasonally. Consumed, fresh during brief availability, preserved when possible through drying. Meat remains an occasional addition rather than daily expectation, more common during autumn slaughter or successful hunting, preserved through smoking and salting for extended use. Hunger is a familiar companion in peasant life, varying in intensity with seasons and harvest success. Late winter and early spring typically bring the greatest scarcity. Stored foods, dwindling before new growth offers sustenance. This calendar of feast and famine shapes both physical development and cultural practice. Bodies adapted to cyclical variation. Preservation techniques refined through necessity. Celebratory. Occasions timed to periods of natural abundance when possible. Disease appears through seasonal patterns as well. Certain ailments common in specific times of year. Winter brings respiratory infections spread through close indoor proximity. Damp, cold, stressing bodies already challenged by reduced nutrition. Spring thaw creates muddy conditions conducive to certain parasitic diseases. Summer heat supports rapid food spoilage leading to digestive ailments. Autumn's harvest work with its physical demands and weather exposure generates injuries and inflammatory conditions. These patterns are recognized and anticipated. Preventive measures and treatments developed through generations of observation. The medieval understanding of contagion lacks germ theory but recognizes patterns of disease spread, leading to practical interventions during epidemics. Villages might institute crude quarantine measures during plague outbreaks, limiting travel and contact with affected areas. Aromatic herbs burned to purify air according to miasma theory of disease transmission, inadvertently providing some disinfectant benefit through volatile plant compounds. Isolation of obviously ill individuals becomes common practice during serious outbreaks, balancing community protection with practical care provision. Your experience of pain differs from modern relationship with physical discomfort. Without effective analgesics for most conditions, pain becomes background noise, noted but accommodated rather than immediately addressed. Chronic pain from injury, arthritis, dental decay. These are expected aspects of aging, managed through distraction. Herbal remedies of limited efficacy. sometimes alcohol for temporary relief. Acute pain signals danger requiring attention. But limits of intervention mean endurance remains the primary response in many cases. Birth and death frame human experience across all eras, but their management in your medieval world contrasts sharply with modern approaches. Birth happens at home with female attendants. Practical knowledge of midwifery passing through generations of women who assist each other through this dangerous transition. Preparations involve physical readiness through continued work, spiritual protection through prayers and blessings, practical assembly of necessary linens and implements. The experience itself unfolds without pain management beyond perhaps herbal preparations with mild sedative properties, breathing techniques, and supportive presence of experienced women. Death occurs within community context rather than medical institutions. The dying person typically at home surrounded by family and neighbors. The transition is marked by religious ritual, last rites providing spiritual preparation and comfort. Practical preparations happen simultaneously. The body washed and dressed by family members, laid out for viewing and visitation. Burial follows relatively quickly due to practical concerns of decomposition. The deceased wrapped in shrouds if coffins are unaffordable, placed in ground consecrated by the church. Mourning continues through prayers, through memorial observances at specified intervals, through practical support for the bereaved family adjusting to loss of contributor. Your medieval village exists within networks extending beyond immediate boundaries, connected to wider systems through economic and social ties. The manor system links agricultural production to nobility through obligation and tribute, peasant labor supporting, aristocratic lifestyles and military capacity in exchange for theoretical protection and access to land. Market systems connect local production to regional exchange, surplus from one area addressing shortages in another through trade networks of varying formality. Religious structures link parish church to diocesan authority to Rome itself. Local practice integrated within international institutional framework. Technology in your world develops, gradually through practical innovation rather than systematic research. New tools and techniques spread through demonstration and adoption when benefits are clear, rejected when costs outweigh perceived advantages. The heavy plow, the horse, collar, the watermill, these significant innovations transform productive capacity where implemented, altering social organization through their economic impact. Other technologies remain consistent for centuries. Hand tools and household implements refined to optimal functionality for particular purposes and maintained in stable form across generations. The medieval worldview encompasses physical reality and supernatural dimensions without clear separation between domains. Angels and demons move through the same world as humans, potentially encountered under specific circumstances. Saints intervene directly in earthly affairs when properly petitioned. Fairies, elves, and various spirits inhabit marginal spaces between village and wilderness, requiring appropriate recognition and propitiation. This integrated cosmology creates a world dense with meaning and agency beyond the visible and tangible. Natural events interpreted through frameworks acknowledging multiple causal levels from practical to divine. Magic exists within this worldview not as fantasy but as practical engagement with unseen forces, distinguished from religion primarily by institutional approval rather than fundamental difference in concept. Protective charms, healing rituals, weather forecasting through celestial observation. These practices occupy ambiguous territory between officially sanctioned religion and prohibited sorcery. Local practitioners walk careful lines between valuable community service and dangerous deviance. Their knowledge requested privately, even as public condemnation might occur during periods of stress or external pressure. The forest surrounding agricultural lands represents both resource and mystery, practical source of essential materials and symbolic wilderness where normal rules attenuate. Gathering expeditions for firewood, mushrooms, berries, medicinal plants extend village economy into these spaces while hunting, legal or poached, provides occasional protein. Simultaneously, folklore populates these same forests with beings requiring special handling, certain trees holding particular power, specific locations known for unusual properties or histories. This double vision of landscape as both material resource and numinous realm characterizes medieval engagement with environment, practical extraction balanced with relational respect. Throughout all these aspects of medieval peasant existence runs a fundamental resilience, the capacity to endure hardship while maintaining essential functions of individual and community life. This isn't romantic endurance, but practical adaptation to circumstances that cannot be immediately changed. Finding pathways through limitation, rather than transformation of underlying conditions. Survival itself becomes achievement, continuing lineage and community despite recurrent threats from climate, disease, political instability, economic exploitation. This resilience appears in technological adaptation, tools and techniques modified for specific local conditions rather than standardized across regions. It emerges in social structures that distribute risk across community networks, sharing resources during individual household crises. Providing labor when illness or injury reduces family capacity. It manifests in psychological frameworks that interpret suffering within meaningful contexts. Religious narratives offering purpose beyond immediate experience. Cultural traditions maintaining continuity through disruption. Sleep occupies approximately a third of medieval life, just as in modern existence, but its patterns and meanings differ significantly. The segmented sleep described earlier. With nighttime waking period between first and second sleep provides space for reflection, intimacy, prayer, and occasional socialization impossible during daylight working hours. Dreams receive attention as potential messages, discussed, and interpreted when significant. Sleep environment prioritizes shared warmth over personal space. Family members and sometimes animals providing necessary heat in uninsulated structures during winter months. Your body's rhythms align more closely with natural light cycles than modern patterns permit. Rising near dawn regardless of season. Retiring not long after dusk except during urgent harvest periods or special celebrations. This alignment produces seasonal variation in sleep duration. Winter bringing extended dark hours typically divided between longer sleep periods and indoor activities conducted by firelight. Summer's brief nights mean correspondingly shorter sleep, sometimes supplemented by brief afternoon. Rest during most intense heat if work schedules allow. As sleep claims you once more at the end of another medieval day, your awareness fades from immediate surroundings, from physical discomfort, from responsibilities awaiting tomorrow's attention. Perhaps you dream of better harvests or healthy children or simple sufficiency, desires shaped by lived experience rather than external standards of achievement or acquisition. Perhaps you dream of saints or ancestors or beings that inhabit the borderlands between village and forest. The conceptual landscape populated by your cultural inheritance. Perhaps sleep brings simple oblivion, temporary release from constant physical demands. Modern listeners drifting toward sleep while hearing these words experience something you never could. Historical distance providing perspective impossible from within any era. They might feel gratitude for medical care that prevents many deaths you would consider inevitable, for heating systems that maintain comfortable temperatures regardless of season, for food security that makes true hunger unfamiliar. They might romanticize perceived simplicity or community connection in your world, overlooking the constraints and hardships that shaped those social formations. They might shudder at sanitation conditions, or limited mobility, or restricted opportunities, judging by standards meaningless within your historical context. The truth of medieval peasant existence lies beyond both romantic idealization and condescending pity, in the complex lived reality of human beings adapting to specific environmental and social conditions with available resources and inherited knowledge. Neither better nor worse than other times, simply different, with particular constraints and possibilities shaping individual and collective experience. The medieval peasant moving through daily routines experiences life with the same fundamental humanity as people in any era, seeking security, connection, meaning, and occasional joy within whatever circumstances history provides. As you sleep one final time in this imaginative journey through medieval existence, remember that you wouldn't last a night as a peasant in this world. Not because medieval people possessed superhuman endurance, but because your body and mind lack the specific adaptations developed through lifelong habituation to these conditions. The discomfort of straw bedding, the respiratory irritation from smoke-filled air, the ambient noise of shared sleeping space, the vigilance required in an environment with more immediate dangers. These would prevent restful sleep for modern visitors to this historical landscape. And yet, human continuity bridges the centuries between medieval peasant existence and contemporary life. The same fundamental needs and capacities expressed through different cultural forms and technological mediations. The medieval world remains simultaneously foreign and familiar, recognizable in its humanity while alien in its specific arrangements. Understanding this balance helps appreciate both historical difference and enduring commonality. Resisting both dismissive superiority and nostalgic idealization in favor of nuanced recognition of human adaptation across time. Sleep now, as countless generations have slept before and will sleep after, participating in this most universal human experience. Sleep, and perhaps carry into dreams some fragment of connection to those who slept centuries ago on straw mattresses, in smoke-filled cottages, who woke to cock's crow rather than alarm, who moved through days governed by sun and season rather than clock and calendar. Sleep, and remember occasionally the medieval world that helped create the conditions for contemporary comfort through centuries of agricultural labor and cultural transmission and technological development. Sleep, just sleep. Morning comes, not with an alarm, but with the slow awareness of light filtering through the shutters of your one window, if you have shutters. Many peasant homes simply have openings covered with oiled parchment or thin cloth to keep out the worst of the elements while letting in some light. Glass is for churches and manor houses, not for people like you. The smell of damp earth rises as the sun warms the ground, mixing with the lingering smoke and the musty scent of the straw mattress. Your body aches in new places today. Perhaps you spent too long bent over the weeding yesterday, or carried too many buckets of water from the stream. These pains are so familiar they barely register in your conscious mind. Merely another sensation in a body that serves as your primary tool for survival. You stretch, joints popping, muscles protesting, before rising to face another day that will look much like the one before. The village has its own rhythm beyond your individual household. Market day comes, perhaps once a week or once a month, depending on the size of your settlement. This is when peddlers might appear with goods from faraway places, needles and pins that can't be made locally, perhaps spices if anyone can afford them. News from other villages and towns. It's a social occasion as much as an economic one, a chance to see people beyond your immediate neighbors, to hear music perhaps, to witness the occasional performance by traveling entertainers. On market day, you might take eggs or cheese or vegetables to sell if you have surplus. The Coins you earn are few but precious. Most of your existence operates without currency through barter and labor exchange. These coins will pay for things you can't produce. Salt, perhaps. Metal tools. The services of specialists like the blacksmith or the miller who grinds your grain for a portion of the flour. The miller is both essential and sometimes resented, operating the mill owned by the Lord, taking a percentage of everyone's grain as payment. The millstones are valuable technology, representing an investment beyond what individual families could manage. The same is true of the communal oven in some villages, where bread is baked for a fee because individual homes don't have the facilities for proper baking. Special occasions punctuate the yearly cycle, bringing brief respite from the daily struggle. Christmas comes with its 12 days of celebration, a welcome brightness in the darkest time of year. Even the poorest families try to have meat for Christmas dinner, save a bit of honey for special treats, gather evergreens to brighten the home. The work doesn't stop entirely. Animals still need tending. Fires still need feeding. But there's more time for games and stories and simply being together. Easter arrives after the long fast of Lent, a celebration of rebirth that coincides with spring's renewal. Eggs that have been saved and stored are finally eaten, symbolic of new life and practically a welcome source of protein after winter's scarcity. May Day brings dancing around the maypole, a rare opportunity for courtship and community celebration as the world turns green again. Midsummer is marked with bonfires and feasting, taking advantage of the longest days for extended revelry. Harvest festivals mark the successful completion of the most critical work of the year, offering thanks for whatever the fields have yielded and praying for enough to last through winter. All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day in autumn acknowledge the thinning barrier between the living and the dead, with prayers for departed family members and rituals to protect against malevolent spirits. These celebrations are tied to both the religious calendar and the agricultural seasons, blending Christian observance with older traditions that marked the turning of the year. They provide structure and meaning beyond daily survival, connecting your small community to both the eternal cycles of nature and the broader Christian world. Personal milestones are marked simply but significantly. Marriages aren't elaborate affairs with white dresses and tiered cakes, but they're important community events nonetheless. Two families joining resources, two young people beginning their life together. These are worth celebrating with the best food that can be managed, with music and dancing if possible, with gifts of practical household items from family and neighbors. A typical peasant wedding might be preceded by a contract negotiated between families, detailing what each brings to the marriage and what responsibilities are expected. The ceremony itself takes place at the church door, not inside the church initially. Only the blessing afterward happens within the sacred space. The celebration that follows is held outdoors in good weather, in the largest available home or barn, if not. Food and drink are shared, often contributed by many community members to spread the cost. Birth is women's domain, handled by midwives and female relatives with men banished from the birthing room. The dangers are enormous by modern standards. Infection, hemorrhage, obstructed labor, all potentially fatal with no medical interventions available beyond herbal remedies and prayer. You've likely witnessed both successful births and tragic ones. Perhaps served as an attendant yourself if you're a woman old enough to be helpful. Newborns are swaddled tightly, partly for warmth and partly in the belief that it helps their limbs grow straight. They're baptized quickly, ensuring salvation, if they die in infancy, as many do. Names are often chosen from a limited pool. Family names passed down. Saints' names for protection. Biblical names for blessing. Distinctive or unusual names are rare. Conformity begins at birth. Death comes to all eventually, but its approach is recognized and prepared for, differently than in modern times. The dying person is rarely alone. Family gathers. Prayers are said continuously. Last rites administered by the priest if possible. Death at home surrounded by family is the expected end, not the sterile isolation of hospitals. The body is washed and prepared by family members, dressed in simple shrouds, watched over for a day or two before burial. Coffins are luxury items. Most peasants are buried wrapped in cloth, the limited wood resources too valuable to bury. The grave is dug by family and friends, a final service to the departed. The funeral service emphasizes the hope of resurrection, of reunion in heaven, practical comfort for those who remain. Grief is expressed openly but briefly. There's no expectation of months spent in mourning, no black clothing or formal mourning periods for common people. Life's demands don't allow for extended withdrawal from duties. The dead are remembered in prayers, in stories told around the fire, in the naming of children after departed relatives. Their possessions are distributed according to custom and need. Nothing wasted in a world of scarcity. Illness, when it comes, is approached with a combination of practical knowledge and spiritual belief. Some common ailments are treated effectively with herbal remedies developed over generations. Mint for digestive troubles, willow bark for pain, honey for wounds. Other treatments range from ineffective to actively harmful. Bloodletting, to balance humors, applications of substances that might cause infection rather than prevent it. Prayer and protective charms are as much a part of healthcare as physical remedies. Saints specialized in particular ailments are invoked. Pilgrimages to holy sites might be undertaken for serious conditions if resources allow. Illness is sometimes seen as spiritual in origin, requiring confession and penance alongside physical treatment. The line between medicine, religion, and superstition doesn't exist in your world. The Black Death, when it sweeps through Europe, transforms village life in ways that will echo for generations. In the span of months, anywhere from a third to half of the population might die. Sometimes entire families wiped out, sometimes lone survivors left to rebuild. The social fabric tears and reforms. Labor becomes more valuable with fewer workers available. Some villages are abandoned entirely. Others absorb survivors from multiple communities. For those who live through the plague, the world is forever divided into before and after. The experience shapes religious expression, artistic themes, social relationships. Death becomes an even more prominent motif in the cultural imagination, depicted in church art and popular stories as a figure who comes for everyone regardless of rank or wealth. The relative value of peasant labor increases in the aftermath, subtly shifting the balance of power between workers and landowners. Wars rarely reach your village directly, fought by nobles and their armies some distance away. But the effects ripple outward. Increased taxes to fund military campaigns, food requisitioned for troops, young men sometimes conscripted as foot soldiers. Occasionally, the violence spills beyond battlefields as bands of mercenaries or disbanded soldiers move through the countryside, taking what they need or want with little regard for those who produced it. In troubled times, bandits become more common in the forests and on the roads between settlements. Travel, already difficult and rare, becomes more dangerous. Merchants travel in groups for protection. Pilgrims likewise. Your world contracts further during these periods, limiting itself to what can be reached safely, to what can be defended. Your village has its own internal politics and power structures, small but significant in your daily life. The village headman, often elected from among the more prosperous peasants, mediates disputes and represents community interests to the manor lord. The parish priest holds both spiritual authority and practical power as one of the few literate members of the community. Elders command respect based on their experience and knowledge, their memory of what worked and what failed in previous years. Justice is largely a local matter for minor offenses, disputes over property boundaries, accusations of minor theft. Conflicts between neighbors might be resolved by the village assembly meeting in the churchyard after Sunday services. More serious crimes fall under the jurisdiction of the manor, court, with the lord or his steward presiding. The most severe offenses enter the realm of royal justice, removed from local handling entirely. Punishment tends toward the public and physical. Stocks and pillories stand in the village center, holding offenders for hours or days of public humiliation and abuse. Fines are levied when possible, physical punishment when not. For serious crimes, hanging is the common sentence, carried out publicly as both punishment and deterrent. There are no prisons as we understand them. Long-term incarceration is impractical in a society where every productive member is needed. The manor lord looms large in peasant life, though you might rarely see him in person. His decisions affect everything from what crops are planted to who may marry. His permission is required for children to leave the village for apprenticeships, for pasture lands to be converted to crops, for new buildings to be constructed. He collects his share of everything produced, demands labor service on his own lands, adjudicates disputes that can't be resolved at the village level. The relationship between peasants and lord is complex, a mixture of resentment and pragmatic acceptance. The protection he theoretically provides in unstable times, the infrastructure he maintains like mills and bridges, the social order he represents, all have value even as his demands sometimes seem excessive. Open rebellion is rare and usually disastrous, but small acts of resistance are common. Working slowly on the Lord's fields, forgetting to include some produce in the count, finding ways to appear less prosperous than reality. The church building stands at the physical and spiritual center of village life. Within its stone walls, babies are baptized, couples married, the dead given final blessings. The parish priest leads Sunday services in Latin, a language you don't understand but whose rhythms are deeply familiar. The sermon, delivered in your own language, provides religious instruction and often practical guidance for community living, reinforcing moral codes and social expectations. The church interior is likely the most colorful space you ever enter, its walls painted with biblical scenes and depictions of saints, its altar adorned with the best cloth and metalwork the parish can afford. These images are not mere decoration, but essential teaching tools, books for the illiterate, showing sacred stories and moral lessons to those who cannot read them. Your religious practice extends beyond Sunday attendance. Daily prayers mark the beginning and end of each day. Grace before meals acknowledges divine provision even when food is scarce. The calendar of saints' days provides additional structure, with special observances for local patron saints or those particularly relevant to village concerns. Saint Isidore for farming, Saint Barbara for protection from storms, Saint Apollonia for toothache. Pilgrimage is the most significant religious journey most peasants might undertake, traveling to sites of spiritual significance to pray for healing, for fertility, for forgiveness of sins. Some go no further than a neighboring village with a renowned relic. Others might journey for weeks to major shrines like Canterbury or Compostela. These journeys represent rare opportunities to see the wider world, to step outside the narrow confines of village existence temporarily. Children are integrated into work from early ages, not out of cruelty but necessity. By 5 or 6, they're contributing meaningfully to household tasks, gathering eggs, scaring birds from fields, collecting firewood, By 7 or 8, they're learning adult skills in earnest. Boys, following fathers to the fields. Girls, helping mothers with household management and textile production. By 12 or 13, they're working alongside adults with expectations of similar output adjusted only for size and strength. Formal. Education is rare among peasantry, available primarily to boys destined for the priesthood who might receive basic literacy from the parish priest. Most learning happens through observation and practice, watching parents and other adults perform tasks, attempting them under supervision, gradually taking on more responsibility. Children learn what they need to survive in their particular environment. Practical skills valued above abstract knowledge. Textile production occupies much of women's time beyond food preparation and child care. The process begins with raw materials: wool from sheep, flax from carefully processed plants. Spinning transforms these fibers into thread using drop spindles. Simple technology carried easily and worked in odd moments between other tasks. Weaving on home looms creates fabric for clothing, for bedding, for sacks and bags, and all the cloth needs of the household. Clothing is made to last, not following fashion but maximizing durability and function. Garments are patched and mended repeatedly, handed down through family members, eventually cut down to make children's clothes or patches for other items. Nothing is wasted in a world where each piece of cloth represents hours of labor from field to finished product. Food preservation occupies much of late summer and autumn, preparing for winter's scarcity. Without refrigeration, techniques focus on drying, smoking, salting, fermenting. Fruits are dried in the sun or near the fire. Meat is smoked over carefully tended fires or packed in precious salt. Vegetables are fermented into sauerkraut-like preparations. Grain is the most important stored food, kept as dry as possible in elevated granaries designed to minimize rodent access, protected from moisture that leads to mold. Wild foods supplement cultivated crops, especially in hungry times. The forest and meadows provide berries, nuts, edible plants known through generations of gathering. Mushrooms offer substantial nutrition but require careful knowledge to distinguish edible varieties from toxic lookalikes. Game animals provide occasional meat, though hunting rights are often restricted, the forests technically belonging to nobility and trespassing punishable. Small game might be snared secretly, providing protein without attracting attention from authorities. Water sources determine much about village location and daily routine. The well or stream that provides drinking water is essential infrastructure. Its maintenance a community responsibility. Water is carried in wooden buckets or pottery vessels, heavy and awkward, limiting casual use. It's used carefully, prioritized for drinking and cooking, washing of bodies and clothing a less frequent necessity. The same stream might serve multiple purposes: drinking water taken from upstream, washing and waste disposal happening downstream. A practical system with obvious flaws from a modern understanding of disease transmission. Fire is both essential tool and constant danger. Every household maintains flame carefully. Banking. Coals overnight rather than reletting each morning. Communal bread ovens in some villages concentrate the fire risk, allowing better construction and supervision than individual hearths would permit. Still, house fires are a persistent threat, especially with thatch roofing and timber construction. An entire village can burn in hours if wind and weather conspire against containment efforts. The natural world is neither romanticized nor demonized in your medieval understanding. It simply is. The forest provides essential resources: wood for building and burning, game for occasional meat, fruits and nuts and mushrooms to supplement cultivated foods. It also harbors dangers: wolves in some regions, bears in others, human outlaws taking refuge beyond village boundaries. It's approached with practical respect, neither feared unnecessarily nor entered carelessly. Weather dominates agricultural life in ways modern people rarely experience, without weather satellites or forecasting. You read the sky and air with practiced attention, the shape and color of clouds, the behavior of animals, the feel of wind and scent of air, all provide clues to coming conditions. This knowledge isn't perfect, but it's often surprisingly accurate, developed through generations of observation and experience. A sudden storm can destroy weeks of work in minutes, flattening grain ready for harvest, flooding newly planted fields, damaging structures and injuring livestock. Drought brings its own slow devastation, withering crops before maturity, drying wells and streams, weakening animals and humans alike. Unseasonable frost kills tender plants and blossoms, eliminating fruit crops entirely in bad years. These weather events aren't natural disasters in your vocabulary. They're acts of God, sometimes interpreted as punishment, sometimes as tests of faith. Your sense of time differs fundamentally from modern precision. Hours are approximate, marked by church bells and sun position. Dates are tied to saints, days and liturgical seasons more than numerical calendars. 3 days after Michaelmas, or the second Sunday of Advent, are more useful references than numbered dates in a world without personal calendars or ubiquitous timekeeping devices. The pace of life follows natural rhythms, sunrise to sunset, defining the workday, moon phases marking weeks, seasonal changes structuring the year. Artificial light is too precious to waste on extending daylight hours except for emergencies or special occasions. Work and rest patterns adapt to available light. More activity in summer's long days. More rest and indoor tasks during winters. Brief daylight hours. Your concept of distance is similarly tied to practical experience rather than precise measurement. Journeys are measured in days rather than miles. 2 days' walk to the market town, or half a day to the next village. Fields are described by the amount of seed they require, or how long they take to plow, rather than by acreage. The precision of modern measurement exists in some contexts, particularly trade, but doesn't permeate daily experience. Communication happens directly through speech and song, through the ringing of church bells with their codes for different messages. Through visual signals like smoke or flags in some regions, messages travel at the speed of the fastest available transport, usually a person on foot or on horseback. News from distant places arrives weeks or months after events occur, filtered through multiple tellings, changed with each retelling, like the childhood game of whispers. The night brings a different world, one of deeper darkness than modern people can easily imagine. Without light pollution, the stars appear in overwhelming numbers on clear nights. The Milky Way, a visible band across the sky. These stars are both navigation tools and timekeepers, their positions marking seasonal changes and nighttime hours. They feature prominently in folklore and superstition, some believed to influence human affairs, others marking the homes, all of saints or the pathways of angels. Moonlight transforms the familiar landscape on clear nights, providing enough illumination for necessary movement between buildings or for urgent tasks that can't wait for daylight. On moonless nights or during overcast weather, the darkness is nearly complete, making travel hazardous and disorienting even on familiar paths. This darkness shapes social patterns, encouraging people to complete necessary movement before nightfall, to remain within the safety of home and hearth after dark. Sleep patterns adapt to these natural cycles of light and dark, of warmth and cold. The single 8-hour block of sleep considered normal in modern times isn't your pattern. Instead, you likely sleep in segments, A first sleep beginning shortly after dusk, followed by a wakeful period of an hour or two around midnight. Then a second sleep, lasting until dawn. This midnight waking isn't insomnia, but a normal rhythm, a time for prayer, for quiet conversation, for contemplation, or for nursing babies. Dreams carry more significance in your world than in modern psychological understanding. They might be messages from God or saints, visitations from deceased, relatives, omens of things to come. Particularly vivid or unusual dreams are shared and discussed, interpreted by those with reputation for understanding such things. Troubling, recurring dreams might prompt changes in behavior, prayers for protection, consultations with the parish priest or local wise woman. Memory serves functions now relegated to written records. Without literacy or abundant paper, information is stored in human minds, recalled when needed rather than referenced in documents. This creates both limitations and surprising capacities, the inability to record precise details balanced by impressive feats of memorization. Songs and stories preserve history, genealogy, practical knowledge in forms that can be recalled and shared orally. Rhyme and rhythm aid these memory practices, making information easier to retain and retrieve. Your sense of personal identity differs from modern individualism. You understand yourself primarily as a member of a family, a village, a parish, not as a unique individual with unlimited choices and personal preferences. Your name might be shared with many others in the region, distinguished by location or father's name or occupation, rather than treated as a unique identifier. Your worth is measured by your contribution to collective survival and well-being, not by personal achievement or self-actualization. Privacy as a concept barely exists in your world. Physical privacy is nearly impossible in one-room dwellings with multiple inhabitants. Personal thoughts and feelings are assumed to be shared, rather than hidden. Confession to the priest ensures even internal life is known to someone. Secrets are difficult to maintain in small communities where everyone's activities are visible and interconnected. This transparency isn't seen as intrusive. It's simply the natural state of communal living. Your emotional life isn't less rich for these differences, but it's expressed and understood differently. Grief is expected and accepted as part of life, given its space but not permitted to interfere with necessary survival. Joy is found in small pleasures, successful harvests, healthy births, religious festivals that break the routine of labor. Love exists between spouses, between parents and children, between friends and neighbors. But it's demonstrated through practical support and shared struggle more than verbal declarations or grand gestures. Material possessions are few but highly valued, each representing significant investment of labor or resources. A cooking pot, passed down through generations. A knife kept sharp through years of careful maintenance. A wooden chest that holds what few valuables the family possesses. These aren't just objects but essential components of survival and repositories of family history. They're repaired rather than replaced, used until they cannot possibly serve their purpose anymore, then transformed into new uses if possible. Waste is a foreign concept. Everything finds purpose until it absolutely cannot serve any function. Food scraps feed animals or return to the soil. Clothing is worn until threadbare, then cut down for smaller garments or used as cleaning rags or ultimately as stuffing for mattresses. Broken tools provide materials for new items, wood becoming kindling, metal parts repurposed. Even human and animal waste serves as fertilizer, returning nutrients to the soil that provides sustenance. Music and storytelling provide essential entertainment and cultural continuity. Songs accompany work. making repetitive tasks more bearable and coordinating group efforts through shared rhythm. Ballads preserve history and cultural values, passing them between generations in memorable form. Stories told around evening fires entertain while reinforcing moral lessons, explaining natural phenomena, preserving practical knowledge disguised as folk tales. These aren't frivolous pastimes but vital technologies for information storage and transmission in a primarily oral culture. Humor persists even in difficult circumstances, finding expression in wordplay, in physical comedy, in tales of clever peasants outwitting authority figures. Laughter provides necessary relief from the constant physical demands and precariousness of existence. Festival times often include sanctioned subversion of normal hierarchies, the Feast of Fools allowing commoners to mock nobility and clergy temporarily, a safety valve for tensions that might otherwise turn to genuine rebellion. The passing of seasons brings changing work and changing dangers. Winter, with its cold and scarcity, presents risks of hypothermia, malnutrition, illness. Spring brings mud and flooding, unpredictable weather that can destroy new plantings. Summer carries risks of drought, of sunstroke during long hours in the fields. Autumn, for all its abundance, brings its own perils in the desperate rush to harvest before weather turns. Each season requires different knowledge, different precautions, different prayers. Your body bears the marks of this life. Calloused hands from years of labor, weathered skin from constant exposure, missing teeth from decay or injury, scars from accidents with tools and animals. These aren't disfigurements, to you, but normal features of a body that works for survival. The smooth, unblemished appearance valued in modern times would seem strange, impractical, a sign of dangerous idleness rather than beauty. Age comes earlier by modern standards. By 40, you're considered elderly if you've survived that long, your body showing the accumulated wear of decades of physical labor and limited nutrition. Yet those who reach advanced age command respect for their endurance and knowledge, serving as living repositories of community history and practical wisdom. They continue contributing as they're able, shifting to less physically demanding tasks, teaching younger generations, providing childcare while parents work the fields. The continuity of human experience bridges the centuries that separate your life from modern existence. You feel hunger and satisfaction, pain and relief, fear and security, love and grief, just as people do in any era. You laugh at humor, feel awe at beauty, experience curiosity about the wider world, seek meaning beyond mere survival. The circumstances and expressions differ dramatically, but the underlying humanity remains recognizable across time. As you lie again on your straw mattress at day's end, smoke curling through the rafters above, family breathing around you in the darkness, you don't know that centuries later people will try to imagine your life. You don't know that your daily reality, unremarkable to you, will become distant history, studied and recreated and reimagined by those who have never known true hunger or darkness or the rhythm of days governed by sun and seasons rather than clocks and calendars. You don't know that many will romanticize aspects of your existence, imagining greater simplicity and connection to nature while overlooking the constant physical discomfort and precariousness. You don't know that others will shudder at the hardships, the lack of medical care, the limited horizons, the physical demands. You don't know that your life will become a measuring stick for progress, a cautionary tale, a source of both gratitude and nostalgia for those who come long after. You simply live each day as it comes, doing what must be done to survive and, perhaps, thrive within the constraints of your time and place. You find meaning where you can, in faith, in family, in community, in the satisfaction of work well done. You endure what must be endured, adapt to what cannot be changed, innovate where possible within the boundaries of tradition and resources. You are not so different from those who will listen to stories of your life centuries later, simply shaped by different circumstances. And so you sleep once more. Another day complete, another cycle in the endless rounds of medieval peasant existence. The fire banks low, the night creatures call. The stars wheel overhead, marking time's passage. Tomorrow will bring the same challenges, the same work, the same struggle for survival in a world that offers few comforts and much hardship. But it will also bring small joys, moments of connection, the profound satisfaction of needs met through your own efforts. You sleep, and in that sleep perhaps dream of better harvests, of children growing strong, of winters not too harsh and summers not too dry. Simple dreams for a simple life. Not simple through lack of complexity, but simple through focus on what truly matters for survival and meaning. You sleep, and prepare in that sleep for another day of the life that is yours. Neither better nor worse than other lives, simply the one you were born to in this time and place. Sleep now, as your medieval counterparts slept centuries ago. Sleep, and perhaps appreciate the distance between their world and yours, the comforts you take for granted that they never imagined. Sleep, and perhaps recognize too the common humanity that spans those centuries, the shared experience of being human regardless of time or circumstance. Sleep, and dream of lives lived long ago, making possible through their labor and endurance the world you now inhabit. Sleep. Just sleep.